Welcome to Camera Ready and Able, the podcast that explores the intersection of media change and personal growth. I'm your host, Barbara Barna Abel, and my calling is to help you tap into your superpowers, hone your message, and make an impact on the world. This episode is brought to you by the word marketing, which the American Marketing Association defines as the activity, set of institutions, and processes for creating, communicating, delivering, and exchanging offerings that have value for customers, clients, partners, and society at large. In the camera-ready world, where your success depends on communicating how you stand out versus how you fit in, effective marketing is essential. But a lot of us are not born self-marketers. So I am thrilled to have life, business, and career coach, Brian Patacca, here to discuss. Brian is a spiritual practitioner who engages creative professionals seeking to ignite their businesses with fierce accountability, one of my favorite words, marketing innovation, and soul-satisfying success. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you so much for having me. You know, it always feels weird when someone reads your bio out loud, but when you say it, Barbara, it actually made me feel very calm and made me feel very oh, I feel taken care of and I feel so ready to talk about this today. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you. I mean, we've known each other for ages, so this is a real joy for me to have this conversation. So first of all, marketing is your word, and you are an impactful self-marketer yourself, but also what you share with others and help, elevate others. So how do you define marketing?
You know, the word marketing, I think, also can rub a lot of the people that I work with the wrong way even. But at the heart of what we're doing, it is. But a lot of times, someone's more human experience of that is putting themselves out there. And that is where it starts to feel very sensitive and uncomfortable. And, I wish that everyone could just be recognized for the gifts that they were given. And the truth is, oftentimes you need to go public with your gifts or no one's going to know. And that's what I define marketing is like going public with your gifts, is being seen for your gifts. I don't know where I got this from, but I remember they say, if you build it, they will come. I say, no. If you build it and you tell people about it, they will come. No one's coming unless you tell people to come there, right? So most of the people that I work with, I mean, I think that every human being in the world is creative, but a lot of the people that I work with will define themselves as creative. So they're actors, writers, producers, photographers, that kind of world, right? And a lot of your listeners, right? People who are being seen for their creativity. And your creativity is usually doing the thing, whether that's painting or acting or taking photos or whatever it is. It's not usually and now how do I take this little piggy to market? Right? How do I get this out into the world? And because there's a gap there, I think a lot of times, creative people are inherently resourceful and inherent problem solvers. I think creativity in itself is problem solving in some ways. And so that means that we're always ready to figure it out on our own. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to figure everything, we steal Marie Forleo, everything's figure outable. We're always trying to figure it out on our own, right? And this gap here then, because you're trying to figure it out on your own, leaves a space where all of the mommy daddy issues and all of the stories we tell ourselves and the advice that was been circling around since 1995 can rear its head, and it can all the things that someone said to you in college, and now you're 45 years old and you're still hearing that voice that someone said to you then. All the stuff gets to fill in that gap because that's not your zone of genius. Your zone of genius is taking photos or doing the thing. And so where I've found that I can excel, I guess, or where I can really help people is understanding the creative process and the vulnerability around putting yourself out there while honoring that isn't your calling, that your calling is the thing that you're doing. And that takes a certain degree of, I think, self-awareness, and also how much, one of the things I see people succeed with is when they're willing to treat it like a game or to have fun with it. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But that takes some amount of bruising your knees, some amount of getting it wrong a few times. And so my deep desire is to create or to help creatives feel almost dangerous with the amount of putting themselves out there they're doing. Send enough emails until you're going to barf, or right below the number that's going to make you throw up is the number of emails you need to send, or the number of times you need to post, or right. And oftentimes we're oh, wow, that was 3 emails. Good job. It did not feel like that. And yes. And it was really hard. Great. On my end of my inbox, it was totally fine. I did not get overwhelmed whatsoever. You did not bother me, whoever you think you're going to bother. So that's maybe a long roundabout way to say, that this, I believe, I have a background also as a non-denominational reverend, and went to school for 3 years for that. It should have taken 2 years, but we're not going to talk about that. It took me longer. So I believe that your creativity is your birthright. And so I know that the world is a better place when people are doing what they are called to do, and that is what's going to ultimately uplift the consciousness of the planet. And if the marketing piece is where I can step in to help that happening, that's where I believe my role belongs, is to help you have your greatest expression of that which you were called to do.
Amen to all of that. I think, a twin aspect of this is the S word that we haven't touched on is sales.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
sales and marketing, and in the business world, technically they're two different things. But for those of us who don't come from this naturally, it's all lumped into the same thing of sales and marketing. And to everything you just said, one is the what feels yucky part of it, because we think of marketing as sales and that's self-promotion, and then goes into the deep personal issues and how we raise cultural issues, all of that. So I love that you name checked Marie Forleo. So attaching to that, I'm a big believer in that when we start to focus on the value that we bring, it's so important, because I love the definition of sales as enthusiasm transferred.
I love
Right. So that touches
Yeah.
on that. And then the
Yeah.
other thing that you just said is also the recognition that marketing, people who are really great at marketing, who do a phenomenal job, are super creative, and that it's its own gift and set of skills. And that my mind doesn't think that way. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Barbara, just because you said the sales piece, I want to just speak to that is, I think the sales piece also gives me, there's a kind of danger/freedom that I hope that a lot of people can arrive at, which is a little risky when it comes to business. So I'm going to put the idea out there, then everyone put it through your own filter to see how this would apply to you. Right. But my belief is I want to, let's talk about content as a way of marketing just for a second, as a focus to explain this. Is like, I want to be so clear in the messages that I'm putting out into the world that if I am not your person, please unsubscribe and delete and get me. I don't want to add to noise that is keeping you from not taking action. So I don't believe, so this is the anti-business part where, like, I don't believe in competition. What I believe is, like, if you're meant to be with this coach or you're meant to be with that person, you're meant to, great, but please don't let me give you a false sense of doing something in your life because you're just consuming my content. Because the moving of the dial, of course, there's content of mine that can help people move the dial on things. But if you're really, like, the leap between understanding who I am and what I believe and taking action is usually some version of a sale, some version of saying, yes, I'm ready to go to the next step. Right. And so that's my belief, is that I'm speaking it enough so that someone can say, I like what is happening here, I'm ready to do this, or that's not for me, I need to go somewhere else. So I'm always like, you want to get unsubscribes is the best way I can say this. Like, whether you're sending an email or in the way you're feeling about people, is we can't get everyone to like us, and we should not try to get everyone to like us, because then you're really boring. So that we know that we need to have certain people who are our fans or our customers or our casting directors who love you, if I'm talking to an actor right now, right? So that, I think that that's such a freedom that can give you inside of sales, is that we don't need to get everyone to love you. I mean, it's different than when you're selling like Palmolive. I mean, I guess you do, everyone has dishes, so you probably need to get everyone to buy Palmolive. That's not who I think I'm talking to right now, right? So that's just a belief that's giving me danger.
I feel all of this.
Yeah.
And that's where I go back to value, is I'm a big believer. My version of that is to encourage everyone to focus on impact, right? And the value that you bring, and that becomes your benchmark. That's your matrix. And those are your metrics, and not the numbers, to your point, for numbers' sake. And also, when we're focused on people liking us, we're looking inward.
Totally. Oh God, you just called me out so bad, because I don't know if anybody else here has ever written an Instagram post or sent an email in their lifetime. But when I'm about to, like, click send on my email, my email goes out to like 20,000 people. I can sometimes get that, like, well, are the commas in the right place, and are the T's crossed, and are the I's? And I can see myself getting real perfectionist at the very end sometimes. And that's when it's no longer about them and it became about me. And
I
that's,
wouldn't know anything about that, Brian. I've never, ever, ever heard of that. What a wild out there thought you just had.
Yeah, right.
I mean, so that's the human part, and it doesn't get you up on stage. It doesn't stop you.
No.
So that's the point, that we all have that. And to me, when I started to understand, that became I just felt that, like, that cartoon anvil was lifted off my chest when I realized, focus on the person who could be served by what you have to say. Don't focus on yourself.
Yeah.
And that, tap into your calling and why you're here. It's amazing. I feel like we were separated at birth suddenly. So you're not only high level, speaking of concept, but you're also about methodology. So another way to synthesize this is you're not just about the what you need to do, but you're about how I can help you do it, which is magic and is all about value. What do you broadly consider effective marketing today for people who are creative?
Yeah, I think effective marketing is going to, when you read it, when you see it, it is going to make you feel something. It is going to make you do something. It is going to make you notice something. Those are the three things that I think oftentimes that I'm driving towards. How do I want the person to feel when they receive this? Do I want them to actually click? Because sometimes my marketing isn't you need to click and buy. It is know that this is out in the world, right? Or do you need to notice something like this needs to change, or this is not a purchase, but you should go listen to this or whatever, right? Those are the three things, right? So to me, effective marketing is, this is going to sound counterintuitive, but you got to kind of sing your same song again and again and again. And because we're creative people, can get bored with singing our same song. And so we're always on to our next thing. But somebody who came to you in the first place loved you from the song you were singing a year ago, which was, so I'll use my business as an example, right? So in my company, I help a lot of actors get representation. I made that program a few years ago, and of course I'm updating it all the time, but I'm out talking about new things. I'm like, okay, I want actors to become offer only. I don't want them to worry about representation anymore. And But I need to keep talking about that because it is a level at which I make an impact and I serve actors. So I think part of impactful and good marketing is that you are saying the same story over and over again, right? I'm not saying it's a slogan. It could be a slogan, but that you're making sure that people know what you're known for, and that it sparks something. I like when I was talking about when I stare at the email, I'm like, are the commas in the right place? And I usually have to take a step back and go, how do I want the person to feel when they receive this? Or what do I want them to do when they receive this? And then I'm like, oh, who cares about the periods and the T's and the I's and whatever, and I can click send on it again. But to me, it does make you feel something or do something. Notice something is a little softer. I know that was one of my third categories. The notice something for me is, I'll give you an example. Let's pretend you had an event coming up and it was like, this is my teaser to let you know about my event. You can't even RSVP yet. That falls in the notice category for me because you don't need to feel something about it. You should know, like, it's a light save the date. You can't even RSVP yet. To me, that's the notice category. But the feel is, I often feel like I want my emails to land on someone's box or to read the Instagram post and to go, I feel seen. I feel, oh shoot, I feel called out. I feel held. And so that will often help me to drive the marketing that I think has been most effective for my work, is having that kind of a conversation. And I think that to me is what good marketing is a conversation that says, feel something, do something, notice something, and sparks that when someone's, when someone's looking at it. And I mean, and the other part about it is, let's just be real. There's a lot of how-tos inside of this, right? Like, do not write a really, really long email. No one wants to read 5,000. In my experience, no one wants to read 5,000 words in an email, right? Like, format an email so that it's a little bit visually stimulating, so that we're not overwhelmed while we're holding our child's hand and standing at Starbucks. I don't have a kid, but this is my imagination of anyone who ever reads my email, is that they're standing at Starbucks holding their child's hand, and the child is also crying that's in their arms, and they're looking at their phone at the same time. That's how I write my emails, to know that this person is probably going to be distracted. And so I think good marketing also takes in the environment of how someone's consuming it. So that kind of went in a lot of different directions. I don't know if I covered everything, Barbara, but is that helpful?
I'm hanging on your every word.
Yeah.
I want to sit with this for 1 second.
Yeah.
I want to validate, go back to what you just said from the side that I come from, is one, the repetition. There's a reason why repetition is a hallmark of a keynote speech. All these different things, because remembering that the person who's receiving what you said doesn't know that information already. And the repetition is how our brains can start to process. So important. So it's just a great reminder that repetition is powerful and need not be mundane. And then to your point, I mean, I used to work on countdown shows at VH1. The idea that it is really hard to get your, excited every day for Celine Dion, My Heart Will Go On, when it's number one, for months and months and months. But I bring this up too for anybody who works in a highly repetitive business, because if you're a newscaster, it can get hard to give the news. If you do a job where you have to do the same intro to your broadcast every day, you have to mentally decide, I have to feel like it's the first time I'm ever doing this, because to your exact point, somebody could be tuning in for the first time and they can't feel like it's the 1000th time you just did that.
Yeah. And Barbara, you just gave me so much freedom. I appreciate you saying that about repetition, because even I know most people, I'm sure a lot of people listening, like really worry about the words that they're putting into the world or work over their content or their emails and things like that. And one of the things that I recently, when I was working with a copywriter who I was training under, was like, it's okay to repeat yourself sometimes. Because I think we think our best editing is, okay, let's take out all the repetition, make sure it's, and I was like, no, let's just say the exact same sentence a different way, because people need to understand exactly what's happening here. And by saying it a different way, it will land. Like, and it was like such a good freedom to know that. So I hope a lot of people, I always think about that. I would have written you a shorter note, but I didn't have enough time. I forget who said that. Right.
I love
Right.
that.
So I'm not the one who said that. I think it's some like famous founding father or something. But I believe like that is so very true, that when we edit, oftentimes we're pulling out repetition. And what you just said is it gives me freedom, permission to repeat myself more, I would say.
The other thing I want to sit with is the notion of feeling, because again, we cross over in the communities that we serve. So reaching out to get representation, or in my world, pitching, whether that's a project or for money, very, very similar thing. And so it's really easy to get mono focused on the facts.
Yeah.
And the information matters, but what you just said is everything to me. It's, you have to focus on feeling. Yeah. And then the other one, and then what?
Yeah, right. And then what? And then what do they do? And then what do they do? Like, what's the next step?
Because if I want, so what's the result I want? And again, when you're really uncomfortable with asking, which is a whole separate conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really, really tough to figure out. Like, oh, did I just send that and I forgot to put the ask in there? That's
so many times. I'll get email. I got an email yesterday from a client who I adore, and I think that she wants to come back and start working together. And I read the email and I was like, I don't know if there was a question in your email. I'm not sure what kind of response, because I was like, I think you're saying you want to work together, but I couldn't find a question mark. Are you saying you want me to send you the link and we could set up a meet? Like, it was very unclear. And I think we can be so wrapped up in our story that we miss that we haven't like call to action. It might not be that strong of a call to action, but even if it's like reply to this is a call to action, right? So like, I think what you're saying is so true. We have to go back and check it. The other thing, Barbara, that you just reminded me of is I have this thing that I when I work with people on, specifically when they're reaching out to people, which obviously when people are pitching, they're doing this, is I call it the cubic zirconia cure. And what I mean by that is I like to think that you can spot a fake diamond from a mile away. So when you email, that's probably not true, but let's just go with it for this theory. Okay. So, right. Oh my God, your face. If people can see your face right now. So people can read your motives in an email from the first line. And I find that old ways have told you to like fake authenticity, find some news about them, find her. And like, I'm barfing as I say these things out loud. And so what I teach is the cubic zirconia cure is speak into what it is you're doing in that moment, narrate your actions in the email so that no one has to see, oh, I'm going to find out what their fake motive is, what their motive is behind this. So it would sound something like, I'm going to riff this, or like, hey, I'm reaching out to you because I've got a project that I really would love to get in front of your eyes. Your name was the first one that came to my mind, and I wanted to start here. What do you think about getting on the phone? Or I can say like, don't fake me out with stuff at the beginning. How are you doing? And I heard this. But like, if they're a friend of yours, great. And that makes sense. If they're not, it just always feels like you are, it sounds like a shit sandwich, right? You put the good news at the top, you put the hard thing in the middle, you put the good news at the bottom. Like, I just feel like you don't need to do it in that way. Of course, say hello, but I just want you to narrate your action. So it might even sound like, let's say it's a really good friend of yours who has power. I think these are always the hard relationships, right? It might sound like, hey, I've been wanting to ask you this for a while, but our relationship as friends means the most to me. But it's a no-brainer that I should obviously ask you, would you ever take a meeting with me for me to pitch my project? Like, you just have to honor the relationship first. And I so often find that once people have the language for this, they're a little more dangerous and free with being able to reach out to people, because it aligns with the problem is networking, and this other piece of asking, I think sometimes feels schmoozy and gross and inauthentic. And it's because we've been taught inauthentic ways to do it. And so the authentic way is to say the solution is the problem. I feel weird asking, but I'd be an idiot not to. Would you ever take a look at my pitch? If that doesn't feel right, skip it altogether. But I wanted to ask you now, so I'm not kicking myself 2 months from now. Like, just really being honest. And I'm like, be honest. What great coaching advice. But the truth is we're not. We get in front of that computer and we start being weird. And I find that that is such a, to me, freeing when it comes to asking for something.
Can I just point out, we started with cubic zirconium and the idea of fake diamonds. And Brian Patacca, you just dropped so many rare gems. I'm putting them all in my tiara. I have spares. I think I'm going to have a necklace and bracelet to go with. That was incredible. And going back to feeling, how do you want the other person to feel? They feel respected, heard, valued. You honored their time when you're like direct and to the point. So these are all things like, how do you want the other person to feel when they read or receive what you have? Incredible. And then I did want to segue into, for a second, because this all interconnects, is your work with A Course in Miracles, because something I love that intersects because of Gabby Bernstein and her work with Marianne Williamson is hanging right above my desk. I look at it all day long. If your presence doesn't work, neither will your word.
Yes.
That we cannot separate our being from our doing.
Yes. People hear you on the level at which you are speaking, which is also A Course in Miracles thought, right? So this is when you like are trying to have a conversation with your partner or your best friend and you're like, I'm really fucking mad at you right now, but I'm going to really try to, people can smell your shit sandwich with pink frosting on top. We feel the level at which you're speaking to us. And so that's exactly what you're saying there is, your message can't come past your presence. And one thing that I want to just honor when you said that about the part about respecting the other person, you're actually saying, I want to honor your boundary, which the person might not even have yet. Right? You're like giving them an opportunity to have a boundary, which I'm sure we're all really good boundaried listeners right now, but I just wanted to offer that piece too. But yes, A Course in Miracles has, I mean, what would I do without it? It's changed my entire way that I think about the world, the way that I think about my life. It is the spirituality to which has spoken the most to me. And, you know, my favorite quote from A Course in Miracles is, be determined each day not to leave your function unfulfilled. I'll say it one more time. Be determined each day not to leave your function unfulfilled. And when I think of creative people, I think that that is, you know, this is like the, let's say someone who's listening and you're like, you're some kind of marketing person and you love marketing. Let's just say that's what you love to do. What's a good example of someone who's listening right now, Barbara? Let's pick like a really juicy list.
Oh, I could tell you right at the top of my head, the fabulous, glorious Vinny Potestivo, who is my content coach, a marketer savant.
Great.
And this is what I was thinking in the beginning of our conversation, because his brain works, first of all, his left and right brains are going like, his hemispheres are so in sync and spinning at all times. And he just comes up with ideas spontaneously. I'm like, wow. My brain wasn't ever, I was never going to land on that ever. Like 5 years from now, I still wouldn't have gotten to that. So anyway, so that's who we're thinking about, like a marketing marvel.
So think of him. So, right. And he probably loves it, feels really good when he's like having the best time, right? To me, if we're going to imagine that we are given gifts by universe, God, Oprah, Buddha, whatever you believe, and you are meant to execute on them in your life, be determined each day not to leave your function unfulfilled. If Vinny was suddenly like unable to do marketing, suddenly like, or had been away from his desk for 2 months, he would feel unlike himself. He would start to feel uncomfortable. He would start to feel cranky. And we all know this when we are separate from our function, we like start to go, well, that's because I haven't had an opportunity lately. Or that's because and suddenly the conversation no longer becomes about yourself. It becomes about the world or the business or something outside of yourself. When the truth is, you just need to put some hours in on the thing you love to do. So if there's someone who's listening who's, you know, is public speaking, right? And you really love public speaking and wherever you are in your journey with it, if you haven't done it in a long time, you're going to feel crappy just because you haven't done it. And I think a lot of times we want to look at answers outside of that. But if that is the function you're meant to inhabit, you got to spend some time in the sandbox, whether that's for being, you know, I'm saying sandbox because you need to play, whether you're being paid or not, which I think sometimes we can get really tripped up on, is if there's no money attached or there's no forward momentum in it, I don't need to be doing it. And then suddenly you're in a bad mood, like, oh, actually, I'm not vibrating at the frequency of what I'm meant to do here. And that's why you're not attracting in the stuff that you want to attract in. And that was the point that I wanted. That's the biggest lesson I think that A Course in Miracles taught me, other than the 2 words that I think all religions can be summed up in, which is be kind. I think Wayne Dyer was maybe the first person who said that, but to be kind. And I think a lot of us neglect clarity in an effort to be kind when the two are exactly the same thing. So
Go deeper into that,
yeah,
please.
so like when and I'm not the man who I'm not the first person who said this. There's an Italian writer whose name I don't remember right now, but the kindness, clarity is kindness, and kindness is clarity. So what that sounds like is like, hey, Steve, I wanted to see if you might be able to set up an appointment with me. I understand you might be too busy right now, and this might not be something that you can actually help me out with. So let me know. So do you need an appointment with me or not? I got a little bit confused because you were trying to be kind, like you're letting me off the hook, but you're not being really clear about what it is you need. Like that might not be the best example, but I think a lot of us get messy. Particularly, you talked about this earlier, when we ask for help or ask for something, we lose our clarity out of not wanting to take up space, not wanting to look like we're not good enough, not wanting to look like we're an amateur. All of these things get in the way of saying, I need this, will you help? And I just want to offer to anyone who's challenged by asking for help, and I'm going to try to say this as well as I can, you have to admit that you need the help in order for it to show up. And sometimes the admitting is with you first. So for example, this happens a lot when I'm sure this happens with a lot of people who are pitching at times. This happens with my actors who are pitching to agents. They make it sound like everything is perfect and amazing and wonderful. And look at all of my credits and all that I've done. And this is very true for pitching too. And look at all my writing and and everything is so perfect. So if everything is so perfect, why do you need a meeting with me? Why do I need, you're not making a space for me to occupy the role that I like to be in, the thing where I get to fulfill my function, which is to be there for people who are creating content or be there for people who are looking for a manager. You're not making a space for me. And so you're like saying like, I'm on a fast moving train. You want to get on board? Well, no, you seem like you're doing great. I couldn't do any better than what you're doing anyway. So why do you need me? So being able to say the vulnerable space of the help that you need, I find time and time again, when you really say what you need clearly, clear as kind, people will step in. It is when you muddy the water that we don't know who to be. When you either sound too perfect or unclear, we don't know how to show up for you. Also, like, who wants to help someone who's unclear? No one does. Like, that's like, I'm like, I want to help you, but I'm like, what's your question? Can you say it, please? Right?
A version of that I just heard, and oh man, I'm just loving all of this, was that, and it goes back to, we talked about like, serving your highest calling or function, is when you're asking with clarity and kindness, you're allowing somebody else to fulfill their calling by helping you.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, I needed to hear that, because I have a big old card above my desk that says ask.
Oh, I love it.
2 is that the lack of kindness and clarity that we get from the other side, when people won't give feedback, when you never hear, did I even get the role? Did my project get greenlit? Was the thing accepted? And to be honest, one, I have to respect that there are many people you just don't have time because of the volume, but this idea that it's kinder to say nothing instead of just saying, you know what, we're in a log jam, or I honestly, I don't have any feedback. We live in a world where people don't get any feedback.
I know. And it's so painful. It is so painful. One of the things that I'm sure this comes up in your coaching and the work that you do too, is I have actors kind of decide, or people who are pitching decide, what is your reaction going to be to silence, instead of letting themselves make up the story. So my reaction to silence is going to be fill in the blank, that I bless and respect the person that is busy. Because the Course in Miracles would say, just to bring it back here, is all attempts to understand other people's motivations are dangerous. So the moment you begin to say, the reason they didn't respond is, you are wrong. You cannot be right. There's no way that you will know the full story, right? And no matter what your other friend's experience was with that same person, you will not be right, right? I love a no more than I love a silence, of course, because then you get to go, phew, thank God, I'm not holding space for that possibility anymore. Thank God there's only 2 people left for me to meet with. Bless them and move on. And I love a no even more so, because it lets me go, yay, I'm not going to waste any more energy there. And these are like my orange juice concentrate of maybes that I get to focus on. These are the people that might really make it happen for me. Awesome, right? Like I just love the freedom that a no gives. I think no's are the most attractive word in the English language. So what is your new story that you're going to make up when someone is silent, when someone says no, when someone says maybe, when someone says tell me more? Those are like the 5 categories of responses you get, is like no, yes, maybe, tell me more. right? Like, and there could be other permutations of that inside of that, right? And so what are you going to decide is your mindset going to be when you get those responses? Because even a tell me more can be like maybe it's a yes and you can get all excited about it. Or they want to hear more about it. Like, and you have to be like, actually tell me more means they're interested and they're just checking that, like, what is your expectation around each of those responses? And I've seen people be so much more free and like delighted when they get a no, or delighted when the silences come in and they go, great, I get to focus all my attention on the tell me mores and the maybes and the yeses right now. And I also think there's this piece that is a real pisser, which is give them their freaking dignity of their no being the right answer for you too. If they had said yes and they really meant no, you would have had a shitty experience with someone who was half in. I do not want a blasé yes. I do not want let's try it. I want a yes, or let's talk about it later. I don't have time for this, or a no, like, because I'm sure many a person has ended up in multiple meetings with someone who is always just kind of half in, and you've put in so much effort on this half in meeting or manager or agent or whatever you're working with. And I would rather release that person. So I really want to give people the dignity of their no being the right answer. And I'm not knocking on the door again. Like, no, are you sure that I'm not the right one for you? Like, let's focus on the other people here, right? That doesn't mean you can't pitch something else to them again in the future. Of course, that's the open door there. But I just really give them the dignity and the blessing and the thank you. Bless and thank you for that no. Great. Who's my next person? There has to be some belief in, I think when I'm saying this, I realize this, there's a privilege in believing that like the right person is going to be existing for whatever it is that you're pitching or working on, right? That there is going to be another opportunity to pitch it. So I realize that the baseline of this is the belief that if someone says no, there's someone else that can say yes. So I realize in every single industry, there's not always endless numbers of people that you might be pitching to, but I want to bring that into the conversation, at least so that when we're thinking about it, that we like can bless and release and say, there's got to be someone else that is going to be on board. So I want to just at least acknowledge that.
It allows us to circle back to what we talked about earlier, was the energy that we bring to our marketing and communication.
Yeah. Yeah. And isn't a weird word to bring to that is dignity. To me, I think it's so like, I want to bring dignity to the marketing communication and to me, dignity is giving a human being their own full experience, right? In the respect of their full experience of, you want to unsubscribe, you want to say yes, you want to say no, you want to tell me that you want to use a different email address, whatever it is like the respect that you offer, that it is I think a privilege to show up in someone's inbox, right? That you're going to acknowledge that. And because I think that takes away the idea of entitlement and brings in the idea of like the belief that I have, which is I'll sometimes end my emails this way, which like if I'm trying to say, I would say like, be a good Victorian lady, right? Like bring your manners to every single thing that you do. Like if you stopped at someone's house, you'd send them a thank you card. If I run into you, I'm going to send you a thank you card. Like if I see you at a event, I'm going to send you a thank you note, right? Like that is part of being a good Victorian lady, because I'm going to have such good manners that it's going to help us build a relationship. And I'm not going to get weird about sending a thank you for seeing you because I just have good manners and that is my value. It has nothing to do with what is the right thing to say because I have good manners, so I send a note. Like that's the end of the sentence and the end of the thought pattern. Where I'm going with this is the ability to give someone the dignity of saying yes or no is also this belief that you're in a small business. I like to use this as a trope in my work when I'm writing to people is like, this is a small business. I'm sure that our paths will cross again. No matter what, I'm sure that our paths will cross again. I'm glad that we had the chance to connect, right? Some version of that gives the recipient the feeling of this person values this relationship. And we both know that we will be ships passing again soon. And then it gives, I believe, also you the permission to send another email a month later to say, oh, I thought of something that I should share with you. Like that it gives you the, like, we are in this business together. I am aligning myself with the community that we are both in. I am not acting like I am outside of this. And so I sometimes use that language to end an email. So I just offer that to anybody who's listening and thinking about putting this into practice.
Okay. I love so much that we started with marketing and we're ending with dignity and respect. Oh, yeah. I feel so good.
Good. I did my job.
Oh man. Okay, so Brian, where can everyone find you?
Best place to find me, the easiest place is Instagram. Brian Says That. You can always DM me. I am there all the time, and all my content is there too.
And where do people sign up for your newsletter, which is amazing?
Yes. So the best place to do that, if you're an actor listening, I don't know if there's actors listening, but if you are, Super Sneaky Auditions is this really freaking cute download that I have right now that is collected stories of people getting auditions in really unusual ways, but ways that you can actually put into practice yourself. Actually, I'm going to smack myself. Everyone who is listening should go grab that, because here's why. Every person listening needs to grow their network, and there are 23 stories of people growing their networks in unusual ways that you can put into practice, not weird, gross, gimmicky ways, but ways that we often overlook. So I want everyone to grab that. And we'll make sure you get on the right list so you don't get actor stuff. But you just grab that newsletter, supersneakyauditions.com, and then we'll add you to the newsletter.
I hope you'll come back.
I'd love to. This is so fun. Thank you.
I feel very nourished. And I want to thank everyone listening for joining me here and with Brian at Camera Ready and Able. If you're interested in one-on-one media communications or brainstorming training for you or your team, please shoot me a note. And please be sure to visit ableintermedia.com and download my free ebook, 12 Tips for Success on Camera. And as always, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already.